Now, last year's Oppo Find X3 Pro was one of the most goosh-worthy premium flagship smartphones of the year, no doubt about it, which is why I'm super excited to have clutched in my clammy hands today the fresh new Oppo Find X3 Pro. Or to give it the full official title, the Oppo Find X3 Pro 5G, but can we please just remove the 5G from the end of smartphones now? If it's a Pro phone, it's probably gonna have 5G. Now, once again, this is premium tech through and through, and it'll be hitting the UK from April the 14th for the slightly teeth-clenching price of £1,099. You'll be able to grab it from all the big boys, including Carphone Warehouse, O2, EE, yada yada yada. I will be giving you a full review of the Find X3 Pro, but for now, let's get it all unboxed, get it set up, and take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software so you know what to expect. And for more on the latest, greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Alright, so what you get is one Oppo Find X3 Pro. You get a rubber cover, although it's not your usual see-through condom effort. One pokey pin to get your SIM in there. I've got no idea what this is. It looks like a credit card or something. Okay, apparently you get an international warranty service with the Oppo Find X3 Pro. Travel worry-free. Very handy for all those flights abroad we're all taking right now. You've also got the mother frickin' Godzilla of all power adapters. Got a bit of Super VOOC action. There's a highly arousing Type-C USB cable. And last up, Oppo has shoved in a pair of wired earphones. They're your pretty basic bog standard ear scratchers, alright to shove in a bag just in case your Bluetooth pair runs out of battery or something. But unfortunately they are Type-C headphones because there's no headphone jack, once again on the Find X3 Pro. Boo. Now, as with the Oppo Find X2 Pro from last year, one of the most striking things about the Find X3 Pro is that very unique, very sexy design. That arse end is constructed from a single plate of glass, which as you can see there, incorporates the camera chassis as well, which is just a mild little bump. And Oppo told us that this single plate construction is made possible by a hot forging process. Whoa. Of course, one of the best things about the Oppo Find X2 Pro design was that very unique, very snazzy faux leather finish on that back end. Apparently, Oppo has no plans of doing the same sort of treatment for the Find X3 Pro, or at least if it does, it's certainly not in the sharing mood just yet. The Oppo Find X3 Pro is 193 grams, so it's got quite a good heft to it, but it's not quite as full-on cumbersome as some massive premium flagships are. This is the gloss black model, which is actually more of a silver. As you can see, that's got a proper full-on mirrored finish, which unfortunately is already picking up fingerprint scuffs, as you can kind of make out there. Otherwise, you can grab the Find X3 Pro in a matte blue finish if you prefer a sort of a more frosted design, which will hide those fingerprints a lot more effectively. And apparently both models are fine and smooth like baby skin, and I don't really need to add anything more to that. I'll tell you one thing for sure right now is that this is one slippery wee beastie, so you definitely don't want to be shoving the Find X3 Pro on the arm of your sofa. That is going to slide off straight away. Now, I believe that it's Gorilla Glass 5 used in the construction on the back end and the front end as well, although Oppo didn't specify exactly which version in the pre-launch specs. And you also get a pre-installed screen protector up front as well, so double the protection there. And yes, full-on IP68 water and dust resistance to boot. Okay, time to bung the old SIM inside the Oppo Find X3 Pro. And what you have here is a double-sided SIM tray, so space for two SIMs at once, but unfortunately no room in there for a micro SD memory card. And now it's time to get this absolute unit all set up. Alright, so the Oppo Find X3 Pro is all set up. I've actually had my SIM stuffed in there for a couple of days already, getting to know it a little bit better. And as you'd expect from a 2021 flagship smartphone, it is the latest and freshest Android 11 stuffed on here, with a good bit of ColorOS 11.2 slathered on top. That's the latest version. ColorOS is definitely a love it or hate it launcher. Certainly it adds a lot of bonus features to Android, which you can immediately tell if you dive into the settings. You've got loads of extra stuff in there that you wouldn't get with a stock Android smartphone. Unfortunately, sometimes actually finding the feature that you require at any given moment can be a little bit tricky because that settings menu is an absolute clusterfuck. I do like the sheer amount of customization you get in ColorOS, although I did find there was a fair bit of tinkering I had to do when I first booted up the Find X3 Pro. For instance, during the standard home mode, I wanted to stick it in the draw mode, so you've actually got that apps tray, which is definitely a must-have. I mean, it's not a frickin' iPhone, come on. Got my geeky animated background on the go, all that good stuff, and quite a lot of the personalization can be done if you dive into the, unsurprisingly, personalization section of the settings. That's where you can play around with the wallpapers, change a theme, add the always on display, of course. You've got a good variety to play around with, digital and analog clocks and just like crazy acid trip bullshit as well. And the vast majority of these you can fully customize as well to get a very particular color and font and specific information on. You've also got a small variety of different icon styles that you can play around with. You can change the grid size and everything, of course. Even the animation that plays out every time you use that in-display fingerprint sensor. And I definitely still absolutely adore that edge lighten feature whenever you get a notification ticking through. Yum! And of course, ColorOS doesn't offer the same level of customization as some Android launchers you can download from the Google Play Store, the likes of Nova Launcher, for instance. But you know what, they'll do the average person absolutely fine. There are lots of other features I like on ColorOS as well. Certainly a very helpful one here on the Find X3 Pro is the one-handed mode, as this is a 6.7-inch Goliath. You've got the usual helpful gesture support as well, including raise to wake and the 3-finger swipe in order to take a screenshot. And thankfully, Oppo hasn't been stingy on the storage, especially as there's no micro SD memory card support in the Find X3 Pro. So you've got 256 gigs in there. And it's UFS 3.1, again, as you'd expect at this premium price point, so nice and nippy whenever you're downloading large files or opening games. And when you want to unlock the Oppo Find X3 Pro, it's an optical in-display fingerprint sensor. It is quite low down, but you do get the handy little fingerprint guide so you know exactly where to slap your thumb. And so far certainly seems very responsive indeed. And that's backed by a good bit of face recognition as well. You've got full raise to wake support and everything as well. And as you can see, it's basically instantaneous. It's insane how fast this thing is. So now let's have a gander at that 6.7-inch behemoth AMOLED display, which, as you would expect from the Find X3 Pro, is an absolute stunner. You've got a Quad HD Plus resolution, that's 3216 by 1440, so everything is supremely sharp. As you can see there, the display does curve ever so subtly around the edges of the device. And there is a selfie cam orifice, but it is wedged away in the corner there, and it's not exactly particularly huge. If we wade on into the display settings, the Find X3 Pro is so customizable in this area, it's friggin' nuts. You've got the usual natural tone display and eye comfort modes, so you get nice easy on the peepers experience when you're browsing your Twitter at 3 AM or whatever. Screen color mode offers lots of different options as well, so as you can see, it's set to vivid by default, which I quite like because it gives you those nice punchy hues, but you can also dial things down a bit, get a nice bit of sRGB mode action on the go. You've also got some upscaling options for your really low quality video as well. So for instance, you've got the video image sharpener, which, you know, if you're just watching a bit of 720p content, it can help just fill in some of the blanks, add some finer detail. And ditto the SDR to HDR upscaling as well. Both of these options are deactivated by default, so you'll have to switch those on if you want them. As you can see there though, you can only have one on at any given moment. And I've got to say, absolutely adoring that Find X3 Pro's display so far. It's basically an excuse to not get out of bed in the morning. Why would you stumble your way down the stairs to go to the sofa to watch things on your TV when you've got this stunning screen right there with you? You've got Dolby Vision and HDR10 plus support, so the likes of HDR content in Netflix fully supported. The contrast is absolutely superb, and maximum brightness, no worries there either. Apparently in bright daylight, it will max out at around 1200 nits, and certainly I've had no problems with visibility when I've been outdoors, although admittedly it's not been the sunniest here in the UK so far in March. And another fantastic display feature here on the Find X3 Pro as well, which you'll have to go into the more section of the display settings to find, is the high refresh rate. As you can see there, that is set by default, and it does max out at 120 Hz. So super smooth navigation when you're flipping around in Android. It's just so luxuriously smooth. So the visuals certainly pack a punch here on the Oppo Find X3 Pro, but the audio is a treat as well. You've got a stereo speaker setup. Let's just bump the volume up to max. Videos are any good or not? I certainly haven't watched any of them anytime recently. Next up, Elliot says, what is the best Motorola phone for under £300? Well, Elliot, do I have the video for you, sir? And the audio isn't quite perfectly balanced here on the Oppo Find X3 Pro. You'll find that that bottom speaker has a bit more grunt to it compared with the top one, but nice and loud on that top volume, and the clarity is strong as well. You've got support for Dolby Atmos as well on the Find X3 Pro. As you can see, just leave it in smart mode and it'll generally figure out what you're doing and adjust the audio to suit, but you can have it in specific settings like gaming, movie, music as well. And yeah, there's no headphone jack here on the Oppo Find X3 Pro, which is an increasingly annoying trend among flagship smartphones, but you do get Bluetooth 5.2 support, and absolutely no worries on that front. I've been using it, as I say, for a couple of days to blast my tunes and stuff. Not had a single cutout or judder or anything like that. You've got full LDAC support, aptX, all that good stuff. Unlike other 2021 flagship smartphones like the Xiaomi Mi 11, you've got Qualcomm's Snapdragon 888 Billy Big Bollocks chipset packed in here, providing ample performance, especially when you consider that that's backed here by 12 GB of DDR5 RAM. As usual, gamers are very well catered for indeed here on the Find X3 Pro. You've got the likes of that game space tool, which can just help to block notifications and help to manage your resources to get the best possible performance out of this thing at any given time. The Oppo Find X3 Pro's display supports 240Hz touch response, so basically every swipe, poke, jab, whatever is instantly recognized and registered inside of your game. And the Oppo Find X3 Pro also stays nice and cool under pressure as well. You've got a larger vapor chamber than the Find X2 Pro here, so that just helps to dissipate that heat if you are going to be gaming over a full afternoon or whatever. And Game Space allows you to tweak the sensitivity of the display, get it set up exactly how you like, which proved an absolute game changer in Call of Duty. Plus, of course, because this is the Snapdragon 888, you've got that built-in 5G modem as well as a full 5G future-proofing, as again you'd expect at this sort of sky-high price. And according to Oppo, there's support for 13 separate 5G bands. You've got close to worldwide coverage. And I haven't forgotten you benchmarking fans as well. Ran a bit of Geekbench 5 action on the Oppo Find X3 Pro. The scores weren't quite as strong as some other Snapdragon 888 phones that I've seen, but still very, very respectable indeed. 923 single core, 3216 on the multi. As for the battery, the Oppo Find X3 Pro packs in 4500 mAh capacity cell, and certainly so far I've had no problems with it. As you can see there, almost 2 full hours of screen on time since I took it off charge this morning, and we've still got 84% battery life remaining. The last couple of days I've been using it, made it through a full intensive day without even getting close to draining it. And when you want to power it up, you got support for 65 watt Super VOOC wide charging via the Type-C. You got 30 watt Air VOOC charging as well if you've got a wireless charger at home. And the Oppo Find X3 Pro also has 10 watt reverse wireless charging as well if you've got like some accessories like true wireless earbuds like the Oppo Enco X's, which support that wireless charging. And last up, before we bid adieu, let's check out the Oppo Find X3 Pro's camera tech. Now, the primary sensor used here is a 50 megapixel Sony IMX766, which you also will find on Oppo's previous Reno 5 Pro Plus, I believe it was called. This was custom made for Oppo by Sony, and you've got full support for 10-bit image and video capture here. Certainly the shutter speed is nice and nippy, as is that focal speed. Just instantly snaps onto whatever is in front of you. And certainly so far, the Oppo Find X3 Pro seems to be picking up exactly where the Find X2 Pro left off last year. Gorgeous image capture, nice natural looking colors. Apparently this sensor can accurately reproduce 1 billion different colors. The 10-bit color capture is deactivated by default. You'll have to dive on into the camera settings to activate that if you like, and it shoots it in HEIF format. You've got all the usual camera features on here like HDR, all that good stuff. You've also got that AI scene enhancement mode as well, which can just tweak the camera mode on your behalf. So for instance, here it's detected I'm shooting a lovely human subject, or near human at least.
Don't worry, Veronica, you're real in my eyes.
And it's changed it to portrait mode. The Oppo Find X3 Pro also boasts an ultra-wide angle lens. Of course, well, most smartphones tend to compromise a bit on the ultra-wide angle. You tend to get much crapper detail, and generally the color accuracy and everything suffers a little bit as well. You've actually got a 50 megapixel ultra-wide angle lens on this bad boy. And this uses the same Sony IMX766 sensor as that primary snapper as well. Can once again capture 1 billion colors if you like, no problem. And you find that the Find X3 Pro also limits the amount of distortion that you get around the edges of your ultra-wide angle shots, which can make a lot of snaps on other less awesome smartphones look a bit cack. Your third lens on here is a 13 megapixel telephoto lens. And this offers a 3x optical zoom. You've also got 5x hybrid zoom, and you can keep on pinching in if you want to get it all the way up to the maximum 20x digital zoom. You've also got a good bit of optical image stabilization for that telephoto lens, which proves exceptionally helpful when you're pinched right in. Helps you to get a nice, stable, good looking shot. And the fourth and final lens on the Oppo Find X3 Pro is a 3 megapixel macro shooter whoopie-dee-doo. Now you've got all the usual bonus camera modes on here, the likes of the portrait effort, where you can actually change up the bokeh style effect. Of course, you've got your good old dependable night mode, which can shoot lots of different snaps at different aperture levels and then piece them together. And as you can see, that's active for all of the lenses. Dive on into the more section, and there's unsurprisingly more camera features to play around with, including a pro expert mode, so you can mess around, have a bit of a tinker with the white balance, the ISO levels, the autofocus settings, all that stuff. Again, you can shoot using the different lenses in this mode, and you've also got full support for RAW images if you like. As for your home movies, where you can shoot full HD video at 30 or 60 FPS, otherwise you can bump up to 4K and again shoot at either 30 or 60 FPS, and I believe you can do that with all 3 lenses as well. Yep. And as long as you're shooting at 30 FPS, not 60, you've got that helpful focus lock feature, which can just basically track a subject. Very handy if you're trying to keep tabs on a manic child off their tits on Haribo bouncing about the place. And then last up, if we flip around to the 32 megapixel front-facing selfie snapper, this should prove more than ample for all of your selfie needs. Might even make me look good. Nope, I spoke far too f***ing soon. But again, using that front-facing camera, you've got full support for the night mode, the portrait mode, and when you're shooting video, you can capture at 1080p. And that right there in a nutshell is the Oppo Find X3 Pro, which I'm definitely very much enjoying after just a couple of days of using it. But as I say, stay tuned for my in-depth review where I'll reveal any weird little quirks or any other bits that I really love about it after using it for a full week or so. In the meantime, it'd be great to hear from you as well. Please do slap your initial thoughts down in the comments below. Is the Oppo Find X3 Pro another winner like last year's Find X2 Pro? Or is it just a big heap of cack, whatever you fancy saying? Yeah, go for it. And for more of the latest greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell and have yourselves a lovely rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.